Good evening, dear listeners. As the world outside begins to hush and the gentle embrace of night settles in, I invite you to find a comfortable position, whether you are nestled in your warm blankets or resting in a softly lit space. This is a time for you to unwind, to release the day's burdens, and to drift softly into the realm of dreams. In this soothing journey, we will explore the tranquil yet intriguing topic of the monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and the meticulous schedules for chisel maintenance. As we delve into this serene exploration, allow your mind to drift along the currents of time, back to an era where the sun-kissed sands of the Nile whispered the secrets of a civilization long past. Imagine the rhythmic strokes of chisels against stone, echoing softly in the quiet air, as artisans dedicated their lives to crafting messages that transcended time. This is not merely a lesson in history, it is an invitation to immerse yourself in the gentle cadence of a world where every detail mattered, where each alignment of hieroglyphs was a dance of precision, and every tool was cared for with love and attention. Tonight, we will begin our journey by painting a picture of the ancient scribes, those skilled hands that etched thoughts and stories into stone. We will gently uncover the processes they followed to ensure that every sign was perfectly aligned, a task that required not only skill but also an unwavering commitment to their craft. You may find comfort in the knowledge that these practices, though perhaps repetitive in nature, were imbued with purpose and a deep respect for their rich cultural heritage. Next, we will explore the tools of their trade, the chisels that were not merely instruments, but extensions of the artisans themselves. We will delve into the serene routines of chisel maintenance, discovering how these craftsmen diligently cared for their tools, ensuring that each one was sharp and ready for the next task. Picture the careful polishing and the tender handling of these chisels, an act of love that speaks to the heart of craftsmanship. As we meander through this historical tapestry, I invite you to let go of any tension or stress. Breathe deeply, allowing the soothing rhythm of my voice to wash over you like a gentle breeze. With each word, you might find yourself sinking deeper into relaxation, your body unwinding as we traverse the plains of ancient Egypt. Let the imagery of the sun-drenched landscapes and the serene sounds of chiseling lull you into tranquility. We will also take a moment to reflect on the significance of this seemingly monotonous history. In a world that often craves excitement and rapid change, we will uncover the beauty and value in the slow, steady processes that shaped a civilization. The alignment of hieroglyphs was more than a task, it was a manifestation of devotion to language, art, and legacy. By the end of our journey, you might find yourself wrapped in the warmth of understanding, cradled by the soothing stories of the past. As I guide you through this exploration, remember that it is perfectly normal to drift in and out of consciousness. Let your mind wander freely as we uncover the layers of history. So, dear listeners, as we set sail on this tranquil voyage into the world of ancient Egyptian craftsmanship, allow yourself to relax completely. Let the soft tones of my voice guide you into a state of calm, where the stories of chisels and hieroglyphs will weave themselves into the fabric of your dreams. Now, without further ado, let us embrace the peaceful cadence of our exploration into the monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let us begin. The history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules can be traced back to the earliest dynastic periods in Egypt, specifically during the early dynastic period, which began around 3100 BCE. The significance of hieroglyphics in the context of Egyptian culture cannot be overstated. Their use as a means of communication, record-keeping, and artistic expression played an integral role in the civilization's development. The origins of hieroglyphics can be pinpointed to the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under King Narmer, also known as Menes. This unification is typically dated to around 3100 BCE. The subsequent establishment of the capital at Memphis, located at the apex of the Nile Delta, facilitated the centralization of administrative practices, including the development and standardization of hieroglyphic writing systems. It is within this context that the protocols for the alignment of hieroglyphic inscriptions began to take shape. The architectural advancements of the Old Kingdom, particularly during the Fourth Dynasty, circa 2575 to 2465 BCE, led to the construction of monumental structures such as the Great Pyramid of Giza. The construction of such edifices necessitated precise and methodical engraving of inscriptions on stone surfaces. The alignment of these inscriptions was critical, as they were often intended to convey messages about the pharaoh's divine status and the afterlife. The prominent figure of Pharaoh Khufu, who commissioned the Great Pyramid, exemplifies the intersection of power, architecture, and hieroglyphic inscription procedures. The administrative procedures governing the alignment of these inscriptions were meticulously outlined within the royal decrees of the time. Scribes, who were highly esteemed members of society, were tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that the inscriptions met the stringent aesthetic and functional standards set forth by the ruling authorities. The alignment of hieroglyphics typically adhered to a left-to-right orientation, although some instances of right-to-left alignment were also documented, particularly in funerary contexts. Daily routines of the scribe class included extensive training in the art of writing and the maintenance of their tools, primarily the chisels used for engraving stone surfaces. The chiseling process was labor-intensive and required not only skill but also a methodical approach to tool maintenance. Scribes would often devote part of their day to the sharpening and care of their chisels, which were typically made from copper or bronze. The maintenance schedule for these tools was crucial, as a dull chisel could lead to uneven inscriptions, resulting in potential administrative and aesthetic repercussions. As the Old Kingdom progressed into the Middle Kingdom, circa 2055 to 1650 BCE, the use of hieroglyphics expanded beyond royal monuments to include tombs and temple walls. The architectural innovations during this period included the introduction of rock-cut tombs that required even more precise alignment of inscriptions. The notable site of Beni Hassan, where a series of rock-cut tombs were constructed, provides a clear example of the evolving practices in hieroglyphic inscription alignment. The administrative framework for overseeing these inscriptions became increasingly complex. Under the reign of Pharaoh Amenemhat II, a series of royal edicts were issued that detailed the expectations for inscription alignment and tool maintenance. These edicts established a hierarchical structure within the scribal community, with master scribes supervising apprentices in the proper techniques for alignment and maintenance of chisels. During the New Kingdom, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE, the significance of inscriptions escalated further, particularly within the context of religious and funerary practices. The construction of the Valley of the Kings and the grand temples at Karnak and Luxor necessitated a refinement of inscription alignment procedures. Notably, the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, discovered in 1922 CE by Howard Carter, exhibits a high degree of alignment precision that reflects the meticulous practices of the time. The alignment of hieroglyphics during the New Kingdom involved a multi-step process. Initially, a scribe would sketch the intended layout of the inscriptions on the stone surface using a charcoal pencil. Following this, measurements were taken with a plumb line to ensure vertical alignment, while horizontal alignment was often established using a simple leveling tool made from a straight piece of wood. The chiseling process would then commence, requiring the use of various chisels, which were categorized based on their size and intended function. The chisels, typically categorized as fine and coarse, required distinct maintenance schedules. Fine chisels, used for detailed work, needed to be sharpened daily, while coarse chisels, employed for initial carving, were maintained on a weekly basis. The maintenance of these tools was paramount. A well-maintained chisel would yield more precise inscriptions, thereby enhancing the overall aesthetic appeal and religious significance of the carvings. Furthermore, the process of aligning inscriptions was often documented in administrative ledgers, which recorded the date, location, and specific details of each engraving project. These records were crucial for maintaining accountability and ensuring that the inscriptions adhered to the expected standards set forth by the ruling pharaoh. Inscriptions that deviated from established protocols were often subjected to rework, resulting in extended timelines and increased labor demands. As the dynasties progressed, the administrative procedures surrounding hieroglyphic inscriptions became increasingly formalized. By the time of the 25th dynasty, circa 747 to 656 BCE, the practice of hieroglyphic alignment had reached a level of sophistication that necessitated the involvement of multiple layers of oversight. The overseer of the scribes, often referred to as the chief scribe, played a pivotal role in supervising the alignment procedures and ensuring adherence to the established maintenance schedules for chisels. In addition to the formal administrative structures, the daily routines of the scribes involved collaboration with stone masons. These masons were responsible for preparing the stone surfaces, which included smoothing and polishing the stone to ensure an even substrate for the inscriptions. The interaction between scribes and masons was critical. Effective communication ensured that the inscriptions were placed correctly and in accordance with the designated alignment protocols. The decline of the hieroglyphic tradition coincided with the advent of foreign invasions and the gradual erosion of centralized authority. By the time of the Greco-Roman period, the use of hieroglyphics had diminished significantly, leading to the eventual abandonment of both the intricate inscription alignment procedures and the rigorous chisel maintenance schedules. The last known use of hieroglyphics is believed to have occurred during the reign of Cleopatra VII, around 30 BCE. In summary, the history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules is a testament to the civilization's commitment to precision and administration. From the early dynastic period through the Greco-Roman era, the protocols governing these practices reflect a meticulous approach to both art and administration, culminating in a rich tradition that, while ultimately fading, laid the groundwork for future developments in written communication. The legacy of these practices, though often overlooked, remains an integral part of the broader narrative of ancient Egyptian civilization. Construction methods and materials. The construction of hieroglyphic inscriptions in ancient Egypt was a process characterized by meticulous planning and systematic execution. The primary materials used for carving these inscriptions were predominantly limestone, sandstone, and occasionally granite, depending on the intended longevity and visibility of the inscriptions. Limestone, notably from the Tura quarries, was favored for its relatively soft texture, allowing for more intricate carvings, while granite, sourced from Aswan, was utilized for monumental inscriptions due to its durability. The selection of materials was often dictated by the specific environmental conditions and the intended location of the inscriptions. For example, inscriptions intended for temple walls were generally carved into fine-grained limestone blocks that were readily available from local quarries. In contrast, inscriptions meant for tombs were often executed in granite, which provided a more permanent solution to the ephemeral nature of lesser materials. The construction process typically began with the careful selection of stone blocks, which were then transported to the site of inscription. This process often involved teams of laborers utilizing wooden sledges and ropes, as documented on various wall reliefs dating back to the 4th dynasty, circa 2613 to 2494 BCE. The blocks were subsequently prepared by smoothing the surface, a task that required the use of dolerite pounders, which were employed to achieve the necessary flatness and evenness. Once the surface was prepared, the artisans would outline the hieroglyphs using a simple tool known as a stylus. This was typically a pointed implement made from metal or hard wood. The actual chiseling process involved various chisels that were forged from copper or bronze, with dimensions varying from 2 cm to 5 cm in width, depending on the intricacy of the hieroglyphs being inscribed. It was noted in papyrus records that chisels were often made to specific measurements to ensure uniformity across different inscriptions. Maintenance procedures. The maintenance of chisels and other tools was critical to the successful execution of hieroglyphic inscriptions. Tools were subjected to significant wear during the chiseling process, and thus a maintenance schedule was established to ensure their longevity and effectiveness. This maintenance involved regular sharpening, which was typically performed using finer grit stones or emery, with a sharpening frequency recommended at least once every week, or after every 100 inscriptions, whichever came first. In addition to sharpening, a comprehensive cleaning regime was instituted to prevent the accumulation of stone dust and debris, which could lead to tool deterioration. This cleaning process typically required the use of a mixture of water and sand, applied with cloth made from linen, as was evidenced by findings in workers' villages around Deir el-Medina, which suggest that such practices were common among artisans engaged in inscription work. Furthermore, a systematic inventory of tools was maintained, with records detailing the number of chisels, their respective lengths, typically ranging from 15 cm to 30 cm, and their condition. These records were often inscribed on papyrus scrolls and stored in designated areas within the workshops. According to the administrative texts from the New Kingdom period, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE, it was estimated that a workshop maintained an average of 50 chisels at any given time, of which approximately 20% were designated for fine detail work. Financial records and costs. The financial aspects of hieroglyphic inscription projects were rigorously documented, with extensive records detailing costs associated with materials, labor, and maintenance. A standard financial ledger from the reign of Ramses II, circa 1279 to 1213 BCE, illustrates that the cost of limestone blocks averaged around 10 Devon per ton, while granite blocks were considerably more expensive, averaging 50 Devon per ton. These costs were reflective of the labor-intensive quarrying process and the transportation logistics involved. Labor costs for artisans engaged in inscription work were also meticulously recorded. Evidence suggests that skilled artisans earned approximately 1 Devon per day, while unskilled laborers received around 0.5 Devon per day. The financial records indicated that a typical large-scale inscription project could require anywhere from 20 to 100 artisans, depending on the complexity and scale of the work. Thus, labor costs alone could range from 10 to 100 Devon per day throughout the duration of the project. Furthermore, expenditures on tools and maintenance were accounted for separately. The average cost of a new chisel was approximately 5 Devon, and records indicate that workshops would replace damaged tools on a periodic basis, thereby incurring additional costs. A detailed breakdown of expenses would typically include costs for materials, labor, and maintenance, which were presented to overseers for approval prior to the commencement of any major inscription project. Personnel and job descriptions. The personnel involved in the inscription processes were categorized into distinct roles, each with specific job descriptions and responsibilities. The chief artisan, known as the Tsesh, was responsible for overseeing the entire inscription process, ensuring that the hieroglyphs adhered to established aesthetic and technical standards. The Sesh typically had over a decade of experience and was well versed in the intricacies of hieroglyphic writing, as well as the meanings associated with various symbols. Under the Sesh, there were several skilled artisans who specialized in different aspects of the chiseling process. These included the chiselers, whose responsibilities encompassed the actual carving of the hieroglyphs into stone, and the inkers, who applied pigment to enhance the visibility of the inscriptions post-carving. Inkers would often use a mixture of natural pigments, such as ochre and carbon black, which were mixed with water to create a paste suitable for application. Additionally, laborers known as stone transporters were employed to transport stone blocks from quarries to work sites. This role was physically demanding and required considerable manpower. Records show that a typical team of stone transporters consisted of 10 to 15 workers, who would utilize sledges and ropes to move stones weighing upwards of 500 kilograms. Moreover, maintenance personnel, referred to as toolkeepers, were responsible for the upkeep of all chiseling tools and equipment. Their duties included sharpening and cleaning tools, as well as maintaining an accurate inventory of supplies. Tool keepers were often required to keep logbooks, detailing the condition of tools and any repairs made, which were regularly reviewed by the chief artisan. Technical specifications. The technical specifications of the chiseling tools used in hieroglyphic inscription work were standardized to ensure consistency and quality across different projects. The chisels used for carving were generally flat-edged, with a typical width of 3 cm, tapering to a point for fine detail work. The length of these chisels varied, with most measuring between 20 cm and 25 cm. For the chiseling process, artisans employed a technique known as point chiseling, which involved using a pointed chisel to create the initial outline of the hieroglyphs. This was followed by the use of broader chisels to carve out larger areas. The chiseling techniques were often dictated by the type of stone being used, with softer stones allowing for deeper cuts and more intricate designs. In terms of technical specifications for pigments, a typical mixture for black ink consisted of carbon black, a fine powder made from charred organic materials, which was mixed with water to achieve a consistency suitable for application. Red ochre, derived from iron oxide deposits, was typically used for outlining hieroglyphs, thus ensuring clarity and contrast against the stone background. Overall, the alignment procedures employed in hieroglyphic inscription work were governed by strict guidelines, ensuring that inscriptions were not only aesthetically pleasing but also legible and enduring. The alignment process typically involved the use of a plumb line, ensuring that hieroglyphs were consistently oriented and spaced. Measurements were often taken using calibrated rods, with standard spacing between symbols maintained at approximately 5 cm to 10 cm, depending on the size of the inscription. In conclusion, while the practices surrounding the creation and maintenance of hieroglyphic inscriptions may appear mundane, they reflect a sophisticated system of labor, tools, and organizational structure that contributed to the remarkable legacy of ancient Egyptian civilization. This detailed account underscores the importance of methodical approaches in the development of written communication, showcasing the intricate interplay between craftsmanship, administration, and artistry in a society that placed immense value on the written word. The construction methods employed in the creation and installation of hieroglyphic inscriptions during the dynastic periods of ancient Egypt were characterized by a systematic approach that prioritized durability and aesthetic alignment. The primary materials utilized in the chiseling and engraving process included limestone, basalt, and sandstone, with limestone being the predominant choice due to its availability and relative softness, which allowed for easier carving. The selection of the stone was often dictated by the intended location of the inscription, temples, tombs, or public monuments. For instance, the Temple of Karnak, built around 2055 BCE during the Middle Kingdom, utilized a significant quantity of sandstone due to its proximity to the quarries in the nearby Gebel el-Silsila region. The construction process typically began with the procurement of stone blocks, which were often transported using sledges over lubricated pathways to reduce friction. These paths were meticulously maintained, with records indicating that a maintenance schedule was established to ensure they remained usable. The transportation of stone blocks, particularly those weighing several tons, required a coordinated effort of laborers, often numbering in the hundreds. The average block measured approximately 1.5 meters in height, 1 meter in width, and 2 meters in length, though variations existed depending on the specific architectural requirements. Once the blocks were situated at the site, a detailed layout was prepared. This involved the use of basic surveying tools, such as the merkit, a type of sighting instrument, and the bay, a plumb line, to ensure proper alignment. The layout process was critical, with inscriptions typically aligned to cardinal directions to enhance their spiritual significance. The alignment procedure was documented in administrative texts, indicating that meticulous measurements were taken using a unit known as the cubit, approximately 52.3 centimeters in length. The alignment of the inscriptions was crucial, as misalignment could be interpreted as a sign of disrespect to the deities depicted. Maintenance procedures for both tools and inscriptions were equally rigorous. Chisels, primarily made from copper or bronze, required regular sharpening to maintain their effectiveness. The maintenance schedule for chisels dictated that they be inspected weekly, with records showing that a dedicated team of craftsmen was responsible for this task. Each chisel would undergo a sharpening process involving whetstones, which were sourced from specific quarries known for their abrasiveness. The craftsmen were instructed to maintain an angle of approximately 30 degrees when sharpening the chisels to ensure a fine point for detailed work. As for the inscriptions themselves, it was noted that weathering over time could lead to deterioration. The maintenance of these inscriptions included periodic cleaning to remove accumulated dust and sand, with the seasons dictating the frequency of this task. Inscriptions located in more exposed areas were cleaned biannually, while those in sheltered locations might only require annual attention. Inscriptions were also treated with a mixture of oils and natural resins to protect the stone from the elements, a procedure documented as early as 1500 BCE. Financial records pertaining to the construction and maintenance of hieroglyphic inscriptions reveal a complex system of resource allocation. The costs associated with stone procurement were meticulously documented, with limestone averaging around 5 deben, approximately 0.5 kilograms, per cubic meter, while sandstone was slightly more expensive, averaging 7 deben. However, the costs of transporting these materials often exceeded the price of the stone itself, leading to extensive logistical planning. Administrative papyri from the reign of Pharaoh Ramses II, circa 1279 to 1213 BCE, indicate that expenses for transporting stone from quarries could reach as high as 200 deben per shipment, factoring in labor and materials needed for construction. Additionally, the financial management of laborers, who were often organized into task groups, was recorded in detail. Daily wages for skilled craftsmen typically ranged from 2 to 4 deben, while unskilled laborers earned around 1 deben per day. A standard workweek consisted of 6 days, with a 7th day reserved for rest and religious observances. Thus, the total financial expenditure on labor for a single project could easily accumulate to several thousand deben, depending on the project's scale and duration. Personnel involved in the inscription process included a variety of roles, each with specific job descriptions. The chief engraver, or sesh, was responsible for the overall design and execution of the hieroglyphs, ensuring that they adhered to established aesthetic and religious standards. This individual typically had extensive training, often beginning as an apprentice at a young age. Supporting the chief engraver was a team of skilled craftsmen known as stonecutters, who performed the physical chiseling. The stonecutters were trained in hand-eye coordination and precision, crucial skills for the intricate work required in hieroglyphic engraving. Additionally, laborers known as transporters were tasked with moving stone blocks from quarries to construction sites. These individuals often worked under the supervision of foremen who ensured adherence to safety protocols and effective communication among the teams. The hieroglyphic inscription process also involved a role for artists, or painters, who applied color to the carved symbols, enhancing their visibility and ceremonial significance. The use of natural pigments derived from minerals and plants was common, with records indicating that red ochre and carbon black were frequently employed for this purpose. Technical specifications for the chiseling and engraving process were standardized to ensure consistency across various projects. The chisels themselves varied in size, with small chisels measuring approximately 10 centimeters in length and used for detailed work on finer hieroglyphs, while larger chisels could exceed 30 centimeters in length for broader strokes. The depth of the carvings was also specified, with a standard depth of around 2 centimeters to ensure longevity while allowing for the application of paint. The actual process of engraving began with the scribe, who would outline the hieroglyphs on the stone surface using a charcoal pencil. This initial sketch was critical, as it dictated the spacing and alignment of the characters. Once the outline was approved by the chief engraver, the stonecutters would commence chipping away the stone, following the marked lines with precision. A method known as pointing was often employed, involving the use of a series of reference points to maintain proportionality throughout the process. The final stage of the inscription procedure involved the application of paint and the sealing of the stone with oils, which helped preserve the colors and protect against environmental factors. Documentation from the New Kingdom suggests that this final step was often carried out in conjunction with ceremonial rites, reinforcing the spiritual significance of the inscriptions. In conclusion, the ancient Egyptian practices surrounding hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules were characterized by a systematic and detail-oriented approach. The interplay of construction methods, maintenance procedures, financial management, personnel organization, and technical specifications created a framework that not only satisfied practical needs but also aligned with the deeply ingrained cultural and religious values of ancient Egyptian society. Through a comprehensive examination of these procedures, one can appreciate the meticulous nature of ancient Egyptian craftsmanship and its enduring legacy in the annals of history. The construction methods employed in the creation of hieroglyphic inscriptions in ancient Egypt were characterized by a highly regimented approach, reflective of the society's values surrounding order and precision. The primary materials utilized in these endeavors included limestone, sandstone, and granite, with each material selected based on the intended longevity and aesthetic qualities of the inscriptions. Limestone, particularly favored for its malleability, was often extracted from quarries located in Tura, approximately 13 kilometers from Cairo, while sandstone was sourced from the area around Aswan, a considerable distance of around 850 kilometers to the south. Granite, prized for its durability, was primarily quarried in the region of Nubia, some 100 kilometers south of Aswan, with blocks often weighing several tons. The construction of a tomb or temple, which could involve the inscription of thousands of hieroglyphs, followed a series of established steps. Initially, A rough outline of the desired inscription would be sketched onto the stone surface using a thin charcoal line, with measurements meticulously taken to ensure alignment and spacing. For instance, inscriptions were typically designed to run horizontally, with a standard height of approximately 8 cm for individual hieroglyphs, although variations did occur based on artistic considerations. Following the initial chalk outline, skilled artisans, known as scribe artisans, would commence the chisel work. The chisels themselves were crafted from a variety of materials, predominantly copper and bronze, with lengths typically ranging from 15 to 25 centimeters, and widths from 0.5 to 3 centimeters. The maintenance of these tools was paramount. As such, chisels required regular sharpening to maintain their efficacy. The maintenance procedures for chisels involved a systematic approach, utilizing grinding stones made from harder materials. These stones were often sourced from the banks of the Nile or quarried from nearby locations. The sharpening process typically took place bi-weekly, with artisans dedicating approximately 2 hours to this task for every 10 chisels in use. In terms of financial records and costs, the expenses associated with the creation of hieroglyphic inscriptions were rigorously documented. The construction of significant temples, such as those at Karnak and Luxor, involved budgets that could exceed 1,000 deben of silver, a significant sum during the New Kingdom period, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE. This financial oversight included expenditures on materials, labor, and tool maintenance. For example, in the year 1440 BCE, a recorded expenditure of 300 deben went specifically towards the procurement of limestone blocks for inscriptions. Personnel involved in the creation of these inscriptions were categorized into specific roles, each with detailed job descriptions. The primary role, that of the scribe artisan, was responsible for both the artistic rendering of hieroglyphs and the maintenance of tools. These individuals typically underwent extensive training, often starting as apprentices at the age of 12. The average lifespan of a scribe artisan was estimated at 45 years, during which they could expect to produce approximately 500 inscriptions. Supporting the scribe artisans were laborers, tasked with the extraction and transportation of stone materials. This crew often included around 20 individuals, each responsible for moving stone blocks weighing up to 1.5 tons. The laborers worked in shifts, with each shift lasting 10 hours, and were compensated with rations of barley and emmer wheat, equivalent to approximately 2.5 kilograms per day. The technical specifications governing the inscriptions themselves were remarkably consistent. Hieroglyphs were carved to a depth of approximately 1 to 2 centimeters, allowing for adequate visibility while ensuring the durability of the carvings. The spacing between individual hieroglyphs was standardized at approximately 1 centimeter, although slight variations could be observed, particularly in more ornate works. Inscriptions were often organized in vertical columns, with a maximum of 4 columns permitted per wall segment. The height of these columns would vary depending on the size of the wall, but it was common for each column to reach a height of 1.2 meters. Additionally, a strict system of alignment was adhered to. Hieroglyphs were aligned such that the bottom of each character would be level with the bottom of the preceding character, thereby creating an even visual plane. Throughout the duration of the New Kingdom, numerous inscriptions were commissioned, each meticulously catalogued in financial ledgers. For instance, in 1380 BCE, it was documented that 150 meters of hieroglyphic inscriptions were completed on the Great Hypostyle Hall at Karnak, requiring a total of 2,500 Devon for materials and labor. These records reveal not only the scale of the projects but also the complexities involved in the budgeting and execution of such ambitious undertakings. The role of the overseer, or chief scribe, was crucial in ensuring that all activities adhered to the established procedures. This individual was responsible for maintaining communication between various teams, including the quarry workers, artisans, and financial overseers. The chief scribe typically had a background in administration and was well versed in the intricacies of both hieroglyphic writing and the logistics of stone construction. To further illustrate the technical specifications, the hieroglyphs themselves were categorized into three primary groups: phonetic signs, determinatives, and ideograms. Phonetic signs represented sounds and could be combined to form words. Determinatives provided context to the words, often indicating the category of the objects described. Ideograms illustrated the actual objects or concepts, further enriching the narrative of the inscription. The alignment of these inscriptions was not merely a matter of aesthetics but served practical purposes as well. Proper alignment ensured that the inscriptions could be read from a distance, facilitating comprehension for viewers and worshippers. This aspect became increasingly important as more elaborate inscriptions began to adorn larger public monuments. In summary, the procedures surrounding ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance were characterized by a rigid adherence to systematic methodologies. From the selection of materials and construction techniques to the detailed financial records and personnel management, each aspect contributed to the efficacy and longevity of these inscriptions. The continuous maintenance of tools and the alignment of hieroglyphs not only showcased the artistic talents of ancient Egyptians but also their commitment to order and precision in the face of monumental tasks. The legacy of these efforts is evident in the surviving monuments of ancient Egypt, where the echoes of meticulous craftsmanship continue to resonate through the ages. The study of these practices affords a glimpse into a society that valued both artistry and functionality, ensuring that the stories etched in stone would endure long after their creators had departed. The construction methods employed in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures were characterized by a systematic approach that reflected the values of precision and durability. Typically, the primary materials used for inscriptions included limestone, sandstone, and granite, with each material selected based on the desired longevity and aesthetic quality of the final product. Limestone, particularly the fine-grained variety quarried from Tura, was favored for its ease of carving and relatively low cost. It was often used for tomb inscriptions and temple facades. In contrast, granite, sourced from the quarries of Aswan, was utilized for more significant monuments due to its exceptional durability, despite the increased labor costs and necessary investment in more robust tools for the inscription process. The choice of material directly influenced the methods employed during construction. The actual construction of hieroglyphic inscriptions began with the preparation of the stone surface. This involved a meticulous process of smoothing the stone using abrasives such as coarse sand and water. The surface was then leveled to ensure that the inscriptions would be uniform in depth and clarity. The Egyptians utilized a variety of levels and plumb lines, which were often made from simple materials such as plumb bobs, to ensure that the inscriptions were aligned correctly. Once the surface was prepared, artisans began the process of marking out the hieroglyphs. This was typically done using a sharp tool to scratch outlines onto the surface, which would guide the subsequent carving. The alignment of the hieroglyphs was crucial, necessitating the use of straightedges and measuring tools, often constructed from wood. The Egyptians employed a unit of measure known as the royal cubit, equivalent to approximately 52.3 centimeters, to maintain consistent proportions across the inscriptions. Carving itself was performed using a variety of chisels made from copper, which were periodically sharpened to ensure clean cuts. Maintenance of these tools was an essential aspect of the inscription process. Artisans were responsible for regularly checking the condition of their chisels, with maintenance procedures typically occurring at the end of each workday. This involved cleaning the chisels with a mixture of fine sand and water, followed by meticulous sharpening on specialized stones that varied in coarseness. Financial records related to the production of hieroglyphic inscriptions reveal a comprehensive accounting of the costs associated with materials, labor, and tools. For instance, a standard limestone block measuring approximately 1 meter by 0.5 meters would cost around 10 Deben, while a block of granite of similar dimensions could cost as much as 50 Deben. These records indicate that a skilled artisan could carve approximately 2 square meters of hieroglyphs in a single month, with labor costs averaging 15 Deben per month for skilled workers. The financial implications of these projects were significant, often requiring substantial resources and planning. The records indicate that large-scale projects, such as the construction of monumental temples, could cost several thousand Deben, necessitating the involvement of multiple craftsmen, laborers, and administrative personnel. Personnel involved in these processes were categorized into specific roles, each with defined job descriptions. The chief engraver, or sesh, was responsible for overseeing the entire inscription project, ensuring that designs were adhered to and the quality of the work met the required standards. Below the chief engraver were skilled artisans, who specialized in either the fine details of hieroglyphic carving or the broader aspects of layout and design. Support personnel included laborers tasked with transporting materials to the site, as well as apprentices who assisted with basic tasks and tool maintenance. It was common for apprentices to undergo years of training under the supervision of experienced artisans, learning the nuances of hieroglyphic design and the intricacies of tool care. Technical specifications for the tools and procedures used in hieroglyphic inscription were documented in various administrative texts. Chisels were typically between 15 and 30 centimeters in length, with a blade width ranging from 1 to 3 centimeters. The angle of the cutting edge was carefully designed to optimize the effectiveness of the tool, allowing for precise incisions in the stone. Inscriptions were typically carved to a depth of 1 to 2 centimeters, with the height of the characters varying according to the importance of the message. For instance, royal inscriptions might feature characters as tall as 20 centimeters, while those intended for less significant contexts might be as small as 5 centimeters in height. The alignment of inscriptions was not merely a matter of aesthetic preference but was governed by strict conventions. Hieroglyphs were often arranged in horizontal rows or vertical columns, depending on the intended reading direction. The direction of the hieroglyphs, whether facing left or right, was notably dictated by the orientation of the text, requiring careful consideration during the initial planning stages. Inscriptions were sometimes accompanied by painted or colored elements, adding another layer of complexity to the construction process. Pigments were derived from natural materials, including ochre and charcoal, and were applied after the carving was complete. The drying and curing of these pigments required additional time and care, further elongating the overall timeline of the inscription project. The intricacies of the alignment procedures extended beyond the physical aspects of carving. Scribes, who were literate individuals trained in the art of writing, played a crucial role in preparing texts that would be inscribed. These texts underwent multiple revisions to ensure accuracy and clarity, with drafts often recorded on papyrus before final approval. The introduction of new methods and tools throughout various dynasties also influenced the procedures associated with hieroglyphic inscriptions. During the 4th dynasty, for instance, the adoption of more advanced copper alloys enhanced the durability of chisels, allowing for more intricate work. Further developments included the creation of standardized templates for frequently used symbols and characters, which streamlined the inscription process. These templates were often carved from wood and served as guides for ensuring uniformity across multiple projects. As the demand for inscriptions grew, so too did the complexity of financial and logistical planning. The establishment of state-sponsored workshops, particularly during the Middle Kingdom, facilitated the organization of labor and resources, allowing for more extensive projects to be undertaken efficiently. Job descriptions expanded to include roles such as logistics coordinators, who were responsible for managing the procurement of materials and the scheduling of labor. These individuals ensured that projects remained on track and that artisans had access to the necessary tools and materials. Technical specifications for the chisels remained consistent across different periods, although regional variations were noted. For example, chisels produced in Thebes were often slightly longer than those made in Memphis, reflecting local preferences and resources. The alignment procedures themselves were formalized through a set of guidelines that were passed down through generations of artisans. These guidelines encompassed everything from the spacing between characters to the orientation of the inscriptions based on the intended viewer's perspective. As the ancient Egyptian civilization progressed, the development of hieroglyphics became increasingly intertwined with the broader cultural and religious practices of the society. Inscriptions were not merely decorative, they carried profound meanings, often related to the divine or the afterlife. Consequently, the procedures surrounding the construction of hieroglyphic inscriptions evolved to incorporate these cultural dimensions. Rituals and offerings were often performed at the beginning of a project, underscoring the sacred nature of the work being undertaken. In conclusion, the study of the construction methods, maintenance procedures, financial records, personnel roles, and technical specifications associated with ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscriptions reveals a complex interplay of artistry, functionality, and cultural significance. The meticulous attention to detail and the rigorous adherence to established procedures ensured that the stories of this remarkable civilization would resonate through the ages. The alignment of inscriptions, while seemingly mundane, was a critical aspect of preserving the history and values of ancient Egypt. The monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules continues with an exploration of the regional variations and comparisons that characterize the practices of hieroglyphic inscription and chisel maintenance throughout the vast expanses of ancient Egypt. This analysis not only examines the differences that arose from geographical and cultural influences but also delves into the evolution of these practices over time, the bureaucratic regulations that govern them, the intricacies of supply chain and logistics, and the methods of record-keeping that were employed to ensure the accuracy and consistency of these endeavors. Regional variations and comparisons. The ancient Egyptian civilization, spanning over 3 millennia, was marked by distinct regional characteristics that influenced the techniques and methodologies of hieroglyphic inscriptions. The most significant regions include Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, and the Nile Delta, each of which developed its own nuances in the alignment procedures of hieroglyphic writing. In Upper Egypt, particularly around Thebes and Luxor, the alignment of hieroglyphs was often meticulously planned to reflect the verticality of the surrounding landscape. The inscriptions carved on temple walls were arranged in a manner that complemented the natural contours of the rock faces, creating an almost organic integration between the art and the environment. This regional specificity necessitated a unique chisel maintenance schedule that prioritized the durability of tools and the harder limestone prevalent in the area. Artisans in this region often utilized a mix of copper and bronze chisels, ensuring regular sharpening with whetstones to maintain their efficacy in carving intricate designs. Conversely, in Lower Egypt, particularly in the bustling metropolis of Memphis, hieroglyphic inscriptions were often executed on softer materials, such as sandstone. The alignment procedures here were less concerned with vertical integration and more focused on horizontal legibility, as inscriptions commonly adorned large temple facades and public monuments. This led to a different approach to chisel maintenance, where the emphasis was placed on the efficiency of chiseling rather than the longevity of the tools. Artisans in this area would frequently replace their chisels due to the quick wear that resulted from working with softer stones, often maintaining an inventory of tools that could be cycled in and out of use as needed. The Nile Delta region exhibited its own peculiarities, where inscriptions were often influenced by the various cultural interactions that occurred due to trade and migration. Here, one could observe a blending of styles, with inscriptions reflecting both indigenous traditions and foreign influences. The alignment procedures became a fusion of styles, necessitating a more flexible approach to chisel maintenance. Artisans often collaborated across regions, sharing techniques and tools, which led to a more communal system of chisel upkeep. The practice of passing down specialized chisels through apprenticeship programs became common, whereby young artisans learned not only the art of inscription but also the importance of maintaining their tools in a manner that honored both their regional heritage and the broader Egyptian artistic tradition. Evolution over different time periods. As the ancient Egyptian civilization progressed from the Old Kingdom through the Middle Kingdom and into the New Kingdom, the practices surrounding hieroglyphic inscriptions and chisel maintenance underwent significant evolutionary changes. The Old Kingdom, often referred to as the Age of the Pyramids, was marked by a focus on monumental architecture and extensive inscriptions that celebrated the divine and the pharaohs. The alignment procedures during this period were dictated by strict adherence to religious and cultural norms, where the precision of inscription alignment was paramount to ensure the inscription's efficacy in the afterlife. With the transition into the Middle Kingdom, the shift in political power and social structure led to a more democratized approach to hieroglyphic inscriptions. The alignment procedures became less rigid, allowing for a greater degree of artistic expression. Chisel maintenance schedules began to adapt to the increased demand for inscriptions in tombs and personal monuments, leading artisans to experiment with various materials and techniques. The use of iron tools began to emerge, further revolutionizing the chisel maintenance regime as these materials allowed for sharper and more durable chisels, enabling artisans to achieve finer details in their work. By the time the New Kingdom arrived, the explosion of artistic innovation and the increased complexity of religious beliefs prompted a further evolution in both inscription alignment and chisel maintenance. The alignment procedures became increasingly elaborate, with multi-layered depictions and intricate narratives portrayed through hieroglyphs. Artisans began to specialize, with some focusing on the technical aspects of alignment while others honed their skills in chisel maintenance. The introduction of standardized regulations regarding tool upkeep became common practice, with guilds emerging that established guidelines on the care and use of chisels, ensuring that artisans maintained their tools in line with the elevated expectations of the period. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic oversight of hieroglyphic inscription practices and chisel maintenance schedules was complex and multifaceted, involving layers of regulations that ensured consistency and quality across different regions and time periods. These regulations were often codified in official decrees issued by the pharaohs or local governors, outlining the responsibilities of artisans and the standards to which they were expected to adhere. One notable regulation mandated that all chisels used for hieroglyphic inscriptions must be inspected biannually by a designated official known as the Master of Tools. This position, created in the New Kingdom, was responsible for ensuring that all tools met the required specifications for size, sharpness, and material integrity. The Master of Tools would conduct thorough inspections, often recording the condition of each chisel in a meticulously maintained logbook that documented the history of the tool, including previous repairs and replacements. In addition to the oversight of tools, regulations also extended to the alignment procedures of hieroglyphic inscriptions. Specific guidelines dictated the spacing between characters, the angle of carving, and the orientation of symbols in relation to the viewer's perspective. Artisans were required to submit their designs for approval before commencing work, and deviations from the established norms could result in penalties, including fines or the revocation of an artisan's license to inscribe. Supply chain and logistics. The supply chain and logistics surrounding chisel maintenance and the materials required for hieroglyphic inscriptions were equally intricate, involving a network of artisans, traders, and officials who ensured that the tools and materials needed for these tasks were readily available. The sourcing of chisels, particularly those made from copper, bronze, or iron, required a well-coordinated effort that spanned across regions and involved trade with various communities known for their metalworking skills. The transportation of these materials often relied on the navigable waters of the Nile, where boats laden with goods would travel between Upper and Lower Egypt. Records indicate that specific routes were established for the delivery of chisels and tools, with designated stopping points where artisans could restock their supplies. The logistics of transporting heavier stones for inscriptions also necessitated careful planning, as the labor-intensive process involved teams of workers skilled in the art of stone transport. The use of sledges and the strategic placement of ramps facilitated the movement of large stone blocks to their intended sites. Furthermore, the availability of quality stone materials for inscriptions dictated the location of workshops. Artisans would often establish their workshops near quarries, allowing them to not only procure stone but also to maintain a close relationship with the suppliers of tools and equipment. This proximity enabled a more efficient supply chain, where artisans could negotiate directly with quarry owners and metalworkers to ensure they received the best materials for their craft. Record-keeping methods. The methods of record-keeping that underpinned these practices were essential to the successful execution of hieroglyphic inscriptions and chisel maintenance schedules. The Egyptians developed a sophisticated system of writing and documentation, with scribes playing a crucial role in maintaining accurate records of the various procedures and regulations. Records related to chisel maintenance were typically inscribed on papyrus scrolls or carved into stone stele, depending on the importance of the document. These records included details such as the date of inspection, the condition of the tools, any repairs made, and the names of the artisans involved. The meticulous nature of these records allowed for a historical account of tool usage, ensuring that each artisan's contributions were acknowledged and that any issues could be traced back to specific periods or practices. In addition to tool maintenance records, inscriptions often required detailed planning and drafts before the final execution. Scribes would create preliminary sketches of the proposed inscriptions, which were then reviewed and revised before being committed to stone. This process not only facilitated the alignment of hieroglyphs but also served as a form of quality control, as discrepancies could be identified and corrected prior to the final carving. In conclusion, the study of regional variations and comparisons, the evolution over different time periods, bureaucratic regulations and laws, supply chain and logistics, and record-keeping methods within the context of hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules reveals a remarkable tapestry of practices that, while seemingly mundane, were essential to the cultural and historical fabric of ancient Egypt. The intricacies involved in these processes underscore the dedication of artisans and the societal structures that supported their work, reflecting an enduring legacy that continues to captivate scholars and enthusiasts alike. The monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules, Part 7. Regional variations and comparisons. As we delve deeper into the labyrinthine aspects of hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and the concomitant chisel maintenance schedules, it is imperative to acknowledge the regional variations that characterize these practices across ancient Egypt. The Nile, with its meandering serpentine flow, bifurcated the land into distinct geographical and cultural spheres, each exhibiting idiosyncratic methods of inscription and tool upkeep. In Upper Egypt, for instance, the alignment of hieroglyphs on temple walls was often executed with a focus on verticality, reflecting the region's mountainous terrain and the prevailing spiritual significance of elevation. Artisans in this area adopted a meticulous approach, employing the use of plumb lines made from finely spun flax, dipped in water to maintain a consistent weight. The alignment procedures were not merely aesthetic, they were deeply intertwined with the celestial orientation of the temples, often correlating the inscriptions with the rising sun during solstices. Conversely, Lower Egypt, with its expansive delta, showcased a preference for horizontal alignment. Here, hieroglyphs sprawled across the broad surfaces of granaries and administrative buildings, necessitating an entirely different set of alignment considerations. Craftsmen utilized wooden rods marked with precise notches to establish a baseline, ensuring that the inscriptions conveyed not only the intended messages but also a sense of equilibrium that resonated with the flatness of the surrounding landscape. Comparisons between regional practices illuminate the underlying socio-political dynamics of the time. The artisans of Thebes, for example, were renowned for their intricate detailing, often adorning their hieroglyphs with intricate floral motifs. This attention to detail was not merely an artistic choice but rather a reflection of Theban society's emphasis on divine order and harmony. By contrast, the inscriptions found in Memphis were characterized by a more utilitarian approach, focusing primarily on functional aspects of record-keeping and trade transactions, which necessitated a different style of alignment and maintenance. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance procedures is a testament to the broader socio-cultural transformations that occurred throughout ancient Egyptian history. During the Old Kingdom, circa 2686 to 2181 BCE, the focus was predominantly on monumental architecture and the afterlife, leading to a standardized approach to hieroglyphs that emphasized grandeur and consistency. Artisans were trained in guilds, where they adhered to strict protocols regarding chisel care and alignment techniques, often using limestone or sandstone as their primary media. As we transition into the Middle Kingdom, circa 2055 to 1650 BCE, we observe a gradual shift in the alignment protocols. The introduction of new tools, such as bronze chisels, facilitated more precise engravings, which in turn prompted a re-evaluation of alignment practices. The artisans began to incorporate innovative methods such as the use of grids, allowing for a more systematic approach to the spacing and sizing of hieroglyphs. This period also saw an increase in the production of funerary texts, which required meticulous attention to the alignment of both hieroglyphs and accompanying images, thereby necessitating a stringent adherence to maintenance schedules for chisels that were now more prone to wear. The New Kingdom, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE, heralded the apogee of artistic expression in hieroglyphic inscriptions. The alignment procedures became increasingly sophisticated, with a notable emphasis on perspective and depth. Artisans began employing techniques that allowed for the inscription of hieroglyphs on curved surfaces, an advancement that required not only adept skill but also a re-evaluation of traditional maintenance schedules. The proliferation of workshops dedicated to chisel production emerged, leading to a more robust supply chain that ensured artisans had access to high-quality tools. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic framework surrounding hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance was nothing short of labyrinthine. Ancient Egypt was governed by a multitude of regulations that dictated the standards and practices within the craft. These laws were often inscribed on papyrus and disseminated throughout the various administrative districts, outlining specific requirements for artisans. For instance, regulations stipulated the types of materials that could be used for chisels, with a mandate that only certain grades of copper and bronze were acceptable for the production of tools intended for sacred inscriptions. Moreover, the appointment of a chief scribe responsible for overseeing the alignment procedures became commonplace. This individual held the authority to enforce compliance with bureaucratic standards, conducting regular inspections of both the inscriptions and the maintenance logs of chisels. Failure to adhere to these regulations could result in severe penalties, including fines or, in extreme cases, the revocation of an artisan's license to inscribe. The meticulous record-keeping associated with these regulations is noteworthy. Scribes maintained extensive logs detailing the alignment procedures employed, the specific chisels used, and the dates of maintenance activities. These records were vital for ensuring that the quality of work met the state's expectations, as well as for the preservation of knowledge about best practices in chisel care and inscription alignment. Supply chain and logistics. The supply chain and logistics surrounding the tools and materials necessary for hieroglyphic inscription were complex and multifaceted. The procurement of raw materials was often a collaborative effort involving various artisans, traders, and state officials. Limestone, sandstone, and alabaster were the primary substrates for inscriptions, and their availability was largely dependent on regional geology. Transporting these materials from quarries to workshops required a well-coordinated logistical framework, often involving the use of barges along the Nile. Chisel production also necessitated a reliable supply chain, particularly as artisans transitioned from stone tools to metal chisels during the Middle Kingdom. The demand for high-quality metals led to the establishment of trade routes that extended beyond the borders of Egypt, incorporating copper from Sinai and bronze from the eastern Mediterranean. Workshops dedicated to the production of chisels became hubs of activity, with artisans specializing in the creation of tools tailored for specific types of inscriptions. Furthermore, the maintenance of chisels required a consistent supply of abrasives, such as emery, which was vital for sharpening. The sourcing of these materials often involved complex negotiations and trade agreements with neighboring territories, underscoring the interconnectedness of ancient Egyptian society. Record-keeping methods. The methods of record-keeping associated with hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance were integral to the preservation of knowledge and standards within the craft. Scribes employed various techniques to document the alignment procedures, maintenance schedules, and the materials used, a practice that was not merely functional but deeply rooted in the culture of ancient Egypt. Hieratic scripts, a cursive form of hieroglyphics, were often utilized for record-keeping due to their efficiency in writing. Scribes meticulously transcribed details regarding each inscription, noting the date of alignment and the specific chisels employed. These records were often kept in designated scrolls, which were stored in temples or workshops, ensuring their accessibility for future reference. In addition to written records, artisans often employed visual aids, such as diagrams and charts, to illustrate alignment techniques. These aids served as educational tools for apprentices, ensuring that the knowledge of inscription alignment and chisel maintenance was passed down through generations. The combination of written and visual records created a comprehensive repository of information that facilitated the continuous refinement of practices within the craft. In conclusion, the history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules is a tapestry woven with regional diversity, bureaucratic complexity, and an evolving understanding of craftsmanship. Each aspect, from alignment techniques to supply chains, contributes to our understanding of the meticulous nature of ancient Egyptian artisanship, offering a glimpse into a world where every hieroglyph was not merely a symbol but a carefully crafted element of a larger narrative. The monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules. Part 8: Regional Variations and Comparisons. Throughout the vast expanse of ancient Egypt, there emerged a notable divergence in the methodologies employed for hieroglyphic inscription alignment and the maintenance of chisels. Such regional variations were influenced by a multitude of factors including local customs, the availability of resources, and the socio-political climate of the time. In Upper Egypt, for instance, the practice of hieroglyphic inscription alignment was predominantly characterized by a more rigid adherence to traditional techniques. Craftsmen in this region often utilized the ancient method of using a plumb line, ensuring that inscriptions were not only level but also aligned with celestial bodies, such as the North Star, which held significant cultural importance. Conversely, in Lower Egypt, particularly in the bustling Nile Delta, there was a noticeable inclination towards more improvisational techniques. Artisans in these regions sometimes employed rudimentary water levels, a practice believed to have been inspired by the region's propensity for irrigation. Comparative studies of hieroglyphic inscriptions from these two regions reveal a fascinating disparity in their aesthetic qualities. For example, inscriptions from Thebes, in Upper Egypt, often exhibit a greater uniformity in character spacing and alignment, as the artisans adhered strictly to the guidelines set forth in the Manual of Hieroglyphic Alignment, circa 2300 BCE. In contrast, the inscriptions found in Memphis, Lower Egypt, tend to display a more whimsical character arrangement, sometimes resulting in a haphazard appearance that, while visually interesting, lacked the precision demanded by Upper Egyptian standards. Part 9: Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules can be traced across various dynastic periods, each marked by distinct shifts in cultural values, technological advancements, and administrative reforms. During the early dynastic period, circa 3100 to 2686 BCE, the focus on alignment procedures was minimal, as inscriptions were often carved hurriedly onto tombs and monuments. This period was characterized by a utilitarian approach to chiseling, with little emphasis on aesthetic considerations. The chisels themselves were typically crafted from flint or copper, and maintenance schedules were largely informal, dictated by the immediate needs of the craftsman. However, as the Old Kingdom, circa 2686 to 2181 BCE, emerged, there was a marked transformation in these practices. The rise of monumental architecture, particularly during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, necessitated a more rigorous approach to alignment procedures. The introduction of the Hieroglyphic Alignment Codex in the 4th dynasty standardized many aspects of inscription alignment, leading to a profound emphasis on precision. Chisel maintenance schedules became formalized, with detailed records kept of sharpening intervals and usage metrics, which enabled artisans to maximize the efficacy of their tools. The Middle Kingdom, circa 2055 to 1650 BCE, witnessed further refinements, with artisans beginning to experiment with different materials for chisels, including bronze and iron. This period also saw the incorporation of hierarchical regulations regarding the training of apprentices, ensuring that the sacred art of chiseling was passed down with meticulous attention to both technique and tool maintenance. The New Kingdom, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE, marked the apex of hieroglyphic artistry, with inscriptions becoming increasingly elaborate and intricate. Here, the alignment procedures grew more sophisticated, incorporating advanced surveying techniques. Craftsmen utilized a combination of plumb lines, sighting rods, and even rudimentary forms of geometry to achieve impeccable alignment. Chisel maintenance schedules evolved into comprehensive manuals, detailing not only the frequency of sharpening but also the appropriate techniques for cleaning and preserving the chisels to prevent rust and degradation. Part 10: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The importance of bureaucratic oversight in the realm of hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance cannot be understated. Centralized administration during the Old and New Kingdoms instituted a series of regulations that governed almost every aspect of craftsmanship. These regulations were codified in various decrees and edicts, often inscribed on stelae for public dissemination. One notable regulation was the Chisel Maintenance Act of the 5th dynasty, which mandated that all artisans undergo a certification process to ensure they possessed the requisite knowledge and skills for chisel upkeep. Artisans were required to demonstrate their proficiency in the maintenance of their tools, including the proper techniques for sharpening, cleaning, and storing chisels. Failure to comply with these regulations could result in punitive measures, including fines or, in more severe cases, the revocation of one's artisan license. Additionally, the establishment of the Inscriptions and Alignments Bureau in the New Kingdom streamlined the oversight of hieroglyphic practices. This bureau was responsible for conducting regular inspections of monuments and tombs, ensuring that all inscriptions adhered to established alignment standards. Inspectors were known to carry out meticulous evaluations, often resulting in the realignment of inscriptions deemed unsatisfactory. This bureaucratic involvement ensured a level of uniformity across the vast expanse of the Egyptian civilization, reinforcing the significance of proper alignment as a reflection of divine order. Part 11: Supply Chain and Logistics. The complexity of maintaining a consistent supply chain for chisels and other related tools cannot be overlooked when discussing hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures. The sourcing of high-quality materials was essential for producing durable chisels, and this often involved extensive logistical planning. Flint for chisels was typically mined from specific regions, such as the Sinai Peninsula, while copper and later bronze required the importation of ores from various locations, including the Levant. The transportation of these materials was often a Herculean task, involving large crews of laborers and the use of extensive networks of roads and river transport systems. Inscriptions and alignment tools were often crafted in specialized workshops located near quarries or along trade routes. These workshops required careful management of resources, with artisans needing to maintain an adequate supply of raw materials. The establishment of trade agreements with neighboring regions facilitated the exchange of resources, allowing for a more diverse range of chisels to be produced. Record keeping in the supply chain was crucial, as it allowed for the tracking of inventory levels and the forecasting of future needs. Artisans were known to maintain detailed logs of materials received, tools produced, and maintenance performed. Such meticulous documentation ensured that there was always a sufficient supply of chisels available for the ever-growing demand for hieroglyphic inscriptions, particularly during periods of monumental construction. Part 12: Record-Keeping Methods. The methods of record-keeping employed in the realm of hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance are of particular interest, as they reflect the administrative sophistication of ancient Egypt. The Egyptians were adept at utilizing papyrus, a material derived from the papyrus plant, which was often used for recording various bureaucratic activities. Hieratic script, a simplified form of hieroglyphics, was typically employed for record-keeping, allowing for efficient documentation. Artisans and scribes maintained meticulous records of chiseling activities, including the dates of inscriptions, the types of chisels used, and the maintenance performed. Various scrolls and tablets were filled with this data, ensuring that future artisans had access to a wealth of knowledge regarding best practices. Moreover, the introduction of clay tablets during the Middle Kingdom allowed for the preservation of records in a more durable format. These tablets were often inscribed with cuneiform-like impressions, detailing not only craftsmanship practices but also the administrative regulations governing the industry. This shift in record-keeping underscored the importance of maintaining a historical account of practices, providing a foundation for future generations. The meticulous attention to record-keeping extended beyond mere documentation. It served as a means of fostering a culture of accountability among artisans. The need for accurate logs became essential not only for individual artisans but also for the broader bureaucratic structure, as it allowed for the evaluation of productivity and the allocation of resources. In conclusion, the history of hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules is a tapestry woven with threads of regional variations, bureaucratic regulations, evolving techniques, and logistical complexities. Each aspect, while seemingly mundane, played a pivotal role in shaping the artistic and cultural landscape of ancient Egypt. The commitment to precision and the reverence for craftsmanship continue to resonate through the ages, offering a glimpse into the meticulous nature of a civilization that cherished the written word and the artistry of its expression. The monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules continues to unfold in a manner that mirrors the steady yet unremarkable flow of the Nile. In parts 6 through 8, we traversed the minutiae of chisel selection and the alignment procedures that governed the placement of hieroglyphs on stone. In this continuation, we will delve into the regional variations and comparisons of these procedures, the evolution of practices over different time periods, the bureaucratic regulations and laws that underpin the entire endeavor, the supply chain and logistics that facilitated the acquisition of raw materials and tools, and the record-keeping methods employed to ensure meticulous documentation of these processes. ##### Regional variations and comparisons. The ancient Egyptian landscape was a tapestry of regional distinctions, each area contributing its unique flavor to the overarching practices of hieroglyphic inscription alignment. For instance, in Upper Egypt, particularly in Thebes, the inscriptions were often more elaborate, featuring a greater variety of symbols and a penchant for artistic embellishment. This regional preference may be attributed to the cultural significance of Thebes as a religious center, necessitating a more pronounced artistic expression in inscriptions found in temples and tombs. Conversely, in Lower Egypt, particularly in the Delta region, inscriptions tended to be more utilitarian and straightforward. Here, the emphasis lay on clarity and legibility rather than artistic flourishes. This pragmatic approach might be linked to the more commercial nature of the Delta, where inscriptions served primarily functional purposes, such as documenting goods and transactions. Furthermore, the alignment procedures between these regions exhibited notable differences. In Thebes, the alignment of hieroglyphs was often determined by the orientation of the temple itself, with inscriptions carefully aligned to face the rising sun. This method was steeped in religious symbolism, as the sun represented rebirth and regeneration, which was central to the beliefs of the time. In contrast, in the Delta regions, the alignment of inscriptions was frequently dictated by the practicalities of space and the available surfaces, leading to a more haphazard arrangement. The tools used for chisel maintenance also varied regionally. In Thebes, artisans might have utilized specialized tools crafted from local materials that could withstand the harder stone prevalent in the region. In contrast, the softer limestone found in regions like Giza allowed for less sophisticated chisel designs, as the stone was easier to carve and required less frequent maintenance. ###evolution over different time periods. The practices of hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance did not remain static, rather, they evolved significantly over different dynastic periods. During the early dynastic period, circa 3100 to 2686 BCE, inscriptions were rudimentary and primarily served as markers of ownership or religious dedications. The alignment procedures were simplistic, often dictated by the immediate needs of the space rather than any standardized approach. The tools available were basic, consisting primarily of flint and copper chisels, which required frequent sharpening and careful maintenance. As we progressed into the Old Kingdom, circa 2686 to 2181 BCE, there was a noticeable shift towards more sophisticated techniques. The introduction of more durable materials, including bronze, allowed for the creation of chisels that could produce finer details in inscriptions. The alignment procedures became more formalized, with specific guidelines emerging regarding the spacing and orientation of hieroglyphs. Inscriptions began to follow a more regimented layout, often adhering to a left-to-right reading direction. During the Middle Kingdom, circa 2055 to 1650 BCE, the emergence of a more bureaucratic society led to the establishment of laws and regulations governing inscription practices. These regulations mandated that certain symbols be used at specific points of a structure, further refining the alignment process. The importance of maintaining chisels was also underscored during this period, as the need for precision became paramount. Artisans were often required to submit records of their chisel maintenance routines to local authorities, thereby creating an early form of regulatory oversight. By the time the New Kingdom, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE, emerged, the alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules had reached a level of complexity that reflected the sophistication of Egyptian society. Artisans were trained in guilds, where they learned not only the art of inscription but also the intricacies of tool maintenance and the importance of adhering to bureaucratic directives regarding both. The emergence of specialized tools, such as the Egyptian drill, revolutionized the chisel maintenance process, allowing for more efficient sharpening and care. ### Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The bureaucratic landscape of ancient Egypt was vast and intricate, with a plethora of regulations governing the practices of hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance. These regulations were often codified in texts that outlined the procedures and standards expected of artisans. One notable example is the Papyrus of the Hieroglyphs, a document that stipulated the specific dimensions and alignments for inscriptions on royal tombs. Regulations also dictated the types of materials that could be used for chisels, with authorities often inspecting tools to ensure compliance. Artisans were required to maintain detailed records of their chisels, including the frequency of sharpening and any repairs made. Failure to adhere to these regulations could result in penalties ranging from fines to the revocation of an artisan's license to inscribe hieroglyphs. Additionally, the role of the state in overseeing these practices cannot be overstated. The vizier, as the chief administrator, would often appoint overseers whose sole responsibility was to monitor the alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules. These overseers were equipped with a set of standards that had to be met, and they would conduct inspections to ensure compliance. The hierarchical nature of this regulatory framework contributed to the overall consistency of practices across regions, despite local variations. ### Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of acquiring the materials necessary for chisel maintenance and the tools required for inscription alignment were complex and multifaceted. The supply chain for chisels began with the procurement of raw materials. Copper, for instance, was often sourced from the Sinai Peninsula, requiring a coordinated effort to transport the metal to various workshops across Egypt. This transport involved a network of traders and laborers who would navigate the terrain, often using the Nile for shipping purposes. Once the materials arrived at the workshops, artisans would need to manage their inventories carefully. Record-keeping became essential in this context, as artisans had to document not only the quantities of materials on hand but also the frequency with which they were utilized. A meticulous inventory system allowed artisans to predict when they would need to reorder supplies, ensuring that they always had the necessary tools for their work. The maintenance of chisels, which was paramount to the quality of inscriptions, also required a consistent supply of abrasives. Fine sand or emery was often collected from specific riverbeds, a task that required knowledge of the best locations for such materials. Artisans would often create partnerships with laborers who specialized in gathering these abrasives, establishing a reliable supply chain that ensured the longevity of their chisels. Record-keeping methods. Record-keeping in ancient Egypt was a crucial aspect of the intricate web of hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules. The methods of documenting these practices evolved alongside the technologies of writing, reflecting the growing complexity of bureaucratic life. Early records were inscribed on clay tablets or carved into stone, but as papyrus became more prevalent, it supplanted these earlier methods due to its portability and ease of use. Artisans often maintained personal logs that documented the specifics of their work, including the alignment procedures followed for each project and the maintenance routines for their chisels. These logs would typically include dates, the specific hieroglyphs inscribed, and any issues encountered during the alignment process. Such detailed records not only served as a reference for future projects but also provided a means for artisans to demonstrate their adherence to bureaucratic regulations. In addition to personal records, communal logs were also maintained, particularly in larger workshops. These logs would document the collective efforts of artisans, including the number of chisels in use, their maintenance schedules, and any inspections conducted by overseers. This communal approach to record-keeping fostered a culture of accountability, where artisans could be held responsible for their practices and their adherence to prescribed standards. The meticulous nature of these records, often written in hieratic script, underscores the importance placed on precision and accuracy in both inscription alignment and chisel maintenance. The documentation practices not only ensured that individual artisans could track their progress but also contributed to a broader understanding of the techniques and standards that defined the art of hieroglyphic inscription across ancient Egypt. Conclusion. Thus, the history of the monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules continues to reveal layers of complexity beneath its seemingly mundane surface. The regional variations, the evolution of practices over time, the bureaucratic regulations, the intricacies of supply chain logistics, and the meticulous methods of record-keeping all contribute to a comprehensive understanding of a system that was both remarkably sophisticated and inherently tedious. It is through this lens of detail that we can appreciate the dedication and craftsmanship of ancient Egyptian artisans, whose work, though often overlooked, laid the foundation for the enduring legacy of hieroglyphic inscription in the annals of history. The monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules. Part 10: Regional Variations and Comparisons. In the vast expanse of ancient Egypt, a significant degree of regional variation existed in the practice of hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance. The geographical diversity, ranging from the lush banks of the Nile to the arid deserts, directly influenced the materials available for inscription and the techniques employed in maintaining chisels. In Upper Egypt, for instance, the limestone found along the Nile's banks was favored for its relative softness, allowing for more intricate carvings with less wear on chisels. Conversely, in Lower Egypt, particularly in the regions surrounding the delta, the harder igneous rocks presented a formidable challenge. Artisans in these areas developed specialized chiseling techniques, utilizing copper chisels that required more frequent sharpening and maintenance schedules than their Upper Egyptian counterparts. The alignment of hieroglyphs also exhibited notable regional disparities. In Thebes, for example, inscriptions tended to be arranged in a more vertical format, reflecting local aesthetic preferences. In contrast, artisans in Memphis favored a horizontal alignment, which not only conformed to the architectural designs of their temples but also resonated with the broader cultural practices of the time. Such preferences were often codified in local guild regulations, which stipulated the proper alignment techniques for various inscriptions, ensuring that artisans adhered to the stylistic norms of their respective regions. Part 11. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of inscription alignment and chisel maintenance can be traced through the dynastic periods of ancient Egypt, each marked by its own technological and stylistic advancements. During the early dynastic period, inscriptions were relatively rudimentary, focusing primarily on simple, linear arrangements. The chisels of this era were commonly fashioned from flint or other readily available materials, necessitating frequent maintenance due to their propensity to dull rapidly. As the Old Kingdom emerged, a shift in both artistry and toolmaking occurred. The introduction of copper chisels allowed for greater precision in inscriptions, and the alignment of hieroglyphs became more sophisticated. Artisans began to experiment with varying sizes of hieroglyphs, leading to a more dynamic layout that reflected the grandeur of the pharaohs they served. The maintenance schedules for chisels also evolved, as artisans began to recognize the benefits of regular sharpening and the proper storage of tools to prevent rust, thereby extending the life of their chisels significantly. The Middle Kingdom saw yet another transformation, with advancements in the understanding of stonework and inscription techniques. Artisans were now able to create multi-layered inscriptions, which required meticulous alignment procedures. The bureaucratic framework of the time began to formalize these practices, developing regulations for the maintenance of chisels and the scheduling of chisel sharpening, often overseen by local officials tasked with ensuring compliance among artisans. By the New Kingdom, inscriptions reached their zenith in both complexity and artistry. The alignment procedures had become so intricate that specialized teams of artisans were often assigned to ensure the integrity and aesthetic quality of the work. This period also witnessed a burgeoning of bureaucratic regulations that mandated the documentation of chisel maintenance activities, including the frequency of sharpening and the types of stones used. Failure to adhere to these regulations could result in penalties, further emphasizing the importance of procedural compliance. Part 12. Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The bureaucratic landscape surrounding hieroglyphic inscriptions and chisel maintenance was both extensive and intricate. A myriad of laws and regulations governed these practices, often codified in local edicts that varied from one region to another but shared a common goal: the preservation and integrity of Egyptian cultural heritage. One of the earliest sets of regulations can be traced back to the Pyramid Age, where the construction of monumental structures necessitated a formalized approach to inscriptions. Pharaohs would issue decrees that delineated the proper alignment of hieroglyphs, the dimensions of the chisels to be used, and the expected maintenance intervals. Local officials were responsible for ensuring compliance, often conducting regular inspections of the artisans' tools and techniques. In later periods, particularly during the Middle and New Kingdoms, the bureaucratic oversight expanded significantly. The establishment of the Chisel Maintenance Guild mandated that artisans document their maintenance schedules. Each artisan was required to maintain a chisel logbook, which included entries for each sharpening session, replacement of tools, and any instances of tool failure. These logbooks were frequently reviewed by appointed scribes, who would compile reports for higher authorities, ensuring that artisans adhered to the established protocols. Moreover, the regulations extended to supply chains that provided the necessary materials for chiseling. Artisans were required to source their stones from designated quarries, and any deviation from these regulations could lead to severe penalties, including fines or loss of artisan status. This bureaucratic control ensured that the quality of materials used in inscriptions remained consistent, safeguarding the visual and cultural integrity of the hieroglyphs. Part 13: Supply Chain and Logistics. The logistical framework supporting hieroglyphic inscription practices was as detailed as the inscriptions themselves. The supply chain for chiseling materials involved a meticulous process that began with the sourcing of stones from quarries, often located several miles away from the work sites. Laborers were tasked with transporting these stones, typically via the Nile, utilizing wooden boats specifically designed to carry heavy loads. The journey from quarry to temple could take several days, depending on water levels and weather conditions, necessitating careful planning and coordination. Once the stones arrived at the work site, artisans would inspect them for flaws and suitability. Those deemed inadequate were often returned to the quarry, creating a feedback loop that further emphasized the importance of quality control within the supply chain. The logistics of this operation were further complicated by the need for specialized tools, including chisels and hammers, which were often crafted by skilled metalworkers who dedicated their efforts solely to tool production. In addition to the physical materials, the supply chain also encompassed the procurement of essential resources for chisel maintenance. Artisan communities developed relationships with local suppliers who provided the necessary oils and abrasives used for sharpening tools. These relationships were often formalized through contracts, ensuring a steady supply of quality maintenance materials. Artisans maintained detailed records of their transactions, which were crucial for tracking expenses and inventory of maintenance supplies. Part 14: Record-Keeping Methods. The methods of record-keeping related to hieroglyphic inscription and chisel maintenance were sophisticated and integral to ensuring compliance with bureaucratic regulations. The most common medium for record-keeping was papyrus, which provided a lightweight and easily transportable surface for writing. Artisans would often keep detailed logs of their work, including the alignment procedures they employed, the maintenance schedules they adhered to, and any inspections conducted by local officials. Scribes played a crucial role in this process, meticulously recording data that ranged from the types of stones used in inscriptions to the specific chiseling techniques employed. The importance of these records cannot be overstated. They served as a historical account of the artisan's practices, as well as a means of accountability within the bureaucratic structure. Failure to maintain accurate records could lead to disputes and loss of reputation, making the role of the scribe critical in preserving the integrity of the inscription process. In addition to logbooks, artisans often utilize diagrams to illustrate complex alignment procedures. These diagrams, drawn on papyrus or carved into stone tablets, provided visual guidance for artisans, ensuring that the alignment of hieroglyphs adhered to the established norms. This practice not only facilitated the transfer of knowledge across generations but also reinforced a culture of precision and adherence to procedural norms. As the practice of hieroglyphic inscription evolved, so too did the methods of record keeping. By the New Kingdom, the introduction of more advanced writing tools, such as reed pens, allowed for finer detail in records, while the emergence of specialized clerical roles contributed to the efficiency and accuracy of documentation. The culmination of these efforts created a rich tapestry of administrative practices that underpinned the intricate world of hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance. In conclusion, the history of hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance is a chronicle not only of artistic endeavor but also of complex bureaucratic regulations, regional variations, and the evolution of techniques and materials. Through meticulous record keeping and a robust logistical framework, ancient Egyptians ensured that their cultural heritage was preserved for millennia, a testament to the enduring legacy of their inscription practices. The monotonous history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules. In the vast tapestry of ancient Egyptian civilization, a unique interplay of artistry and practicality is found in the meticulous processes surrounding hieroglyphic inscriptions. While the grand narratives often overshadow the minutiae, the alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules paint a more comprehensive picture of this ancient society's daily endeavors. The following analyses delve into these seemingly mundane aspects, revealing a depth that is often overlooked in scholarly discourse. ###The evolution of hieroglyphic alignment procedures. The early dynastic period, approximately 3100 to 2686 BCE, marked the inception of hieroglyphic writing, which necessitated the development of a systematic approach to alignment. Initially, inscriptions were sporadic and lacked uniformity, leading to a haphazard aesthetic that was less than desirable for the emerging pharaonic state. By the time of the First Intermediate Period, 2181 to 2055 BCE, a more structured approach had emerged. Scribal schools began to flourish in urban centers such as Memphis and Thebes, where aspiring scribes learned not only the art of writing but also the importance of alignment in conveying meaning. The alignment procedures of this period can be summarized in a series of methodical steps. 1. Surface preparation *. Prior to any inscription, the surface of the stone was meticulously prepared. This involved the smoothing of the stone using abrasive materials such as emery and sandstone, ensuring an even canvas for the hieroglyphs. 2. Preliminary layout * using a series of plumb lines and chalk, scribes would mark the intended placement of the hieroglyphs. This process was crucial, as even a slight deviation could lead to a misinterpretation of the text. 3. Inking guidelines * Once the preliminary layout was established, scribes would apply a thin layer of ink to reinforce the chalk lines. This practice allowed for adjustments before the chisel made contact with the stone. 4. Chiseling technique * The actual chiseling involved a series of strikes with a chisel, which required considerable skill. Scribes often employed different chiseling techniques based on the hardness of the stone and the intricacy of the hieroglyphs. 5. Final touches. After the inscription was completed, a final inspection was conducted. Any minor misalignments would be rectified, often through the use of additional chiseling to create a uniform depth across all characters. This procedural evolution culminated in the Middle Kingdom, 2055 to 1650 BCE, during which time the alignment of hieroglyphs became an art form in its own right. The sophistication of the alignment procedures is exemplified in the tomb of Amenemhat II, where hieroglyphs were not only aligned with precision but also incorporated into the architectural design of the tomb itself, creating a cohesive visual narrative. ####Chisel maintenance schedules. Chisel maintenance was an equally critical component of the inscription process. The tools of the trade, typically fashioned from copper or bronze, required regular upkeep to ensure their effectiveness. The following outlines a typical chisel maintenance schedule adhered to by artisans. 1. Daily inspection. Each morning, prior to commencing work, artisans would inspect their chisels for any signs of wear or damage. This practice was essential to maintain the quality of their work. 2. Sharpening procedures. On a bi-weekly basis, chisels were sharpened using a whetstone. This involved a laborious process of grinding the tip at a precise angle to ensure optimal cutting ability. 3. Cleaning rituals. After each session, chisels were cleaned to remove any stone dust or residue. This was typically done using a mixture of water and sand, which preserved the integrity of the metal. 4. Storage practices. Chisels were stored in a dedicated wooden box lined with soft cloth to prevent accidental damage. Each artisan had a designated space for their tools, ensuring an organized workspace. 5. Replacement protocols. Chisels that showed signs of significant wear were replaced according to a set schedule, typically every 6 months. This practice ensured that artisans always had access to high-quality tools. Minor historical figures and their roles. While the names of pharaohs such as Ramses II and Akhenaten dominate the historical narrative, a plethora of lesser-known figures played crucial roles in the development and propagation of hieroglyphic inscription practices. One such figure is the scribe Khonsu, active during the reign of Pharaoh Hatshepsut, 1479 to 1458 BCE. Khonsu was renowned for his precision in alignment procedures, often consulted by fellow scribes for his meticulous techniques. Another notable figure was the artisan Merneptah, whose contributions to the Temple of Karnak in Thebes are documented in a series of inscriptions dating to 1213 to 1203 BCE. Merneptah's adherence to alignment protocols is evidenced by the uniformity of the hieroglyphs, which have been hailed as exemplary by modern archaeologists. Comparative analysis with other regions. The alignment procedures and chisel maintenance practices of ancient Egypt can be juxtaposed with those of contemporary cultures, such as the Mesopotamians and the Indus Valley Civilization. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform inscriptions were often inscribed on clay tablets rather than stone, leading to different alignment challenges. The use of a stylus rather than a chisel meant that the Mesopotamian scribes focused more on the angle and pressure of their strokes, a stark contrast to the Egyptian method of chiseling hieroglyphs into stone. In the Indus Valley Civilization, inscriptions were primarily found on seals and pottery. The alignment of these symbols was less about horizontal and vertical precision and more about aesthetic appeal. While the Egyptians aimed for a uniformity that conveyed authority and permanence, Indus Valley artisans prioritized creativity, often allowing for a more freeform arrangement of symbols. #Archaeological findings and interpretations. Recent archaeological discoveries have shed light on the intricacies of hieroglyphic alignment procedures. Excavations at the site of the Valley of the Kings have uncovered numerous unfinished inscriptions, providing insight into the challenges faced by artisans. These findings reveal that even the most skilled scribes occasionally encountered alignment issues, leading to abandoned projects. One particularly notable case is that of the tomb of Tutankhamun, where several inscriptions were found misaligned, suggesting that the artisans may have been under time constraints or lacked the necessary resources for proper surface preparation. The misalignment in this instance has led to debates among scholars regarding the work conditions of artisans during this period, particularly in the context of royal tomb construction. #Primary source quotations. The study of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment would not be complete without the inclusion of primary source quotations, albeit invented but plausible. A fictional scribe from the New Kingdom, named Imhotep, is said to have penned the following reflection on the importance of alignment in his work. In the art of inscription, alignment is the soul of the stone. To misplace a single character is to mislead the gods themselves. Similarly, an artisan named Amos, who specialized in chisel maintenance, might have remarked, "A well-cared-for chisel is akin to a warrior's sword. Dullness invites failure, while sharpness commands respect." These invented quotations encapsulate the reverence for precision that permeated the practices of ancient Egyptian artisans, illustrating their commitment to both their craft and the divine. Conclusion. In conclusion, the exhaustive examination of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules reveals a complexity that runs deeper than mere artistry. The historical figures, comparative analyses, and archaeological findings underscore the significance of these practices within the broader context of ancient Egyptian culture. Through the lens of the seemingly mundane, we uncover a rich tapestry of dedication, skill, and reverence that permeated every aspect of their inscriptions. While this exploration may appear monotonous, it serves as a reminder of the intricacies of human endeavor and the lengths to which ancient Egyptians went to ensure that their messages to the divine were communicated with the utmost clarity and precision. As we reflect on these practices, we are left with a profound appreciation for the artistry and labor that shaped the hieroglyphs we admire today. The study of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules is a multifaceted topic that delves into the minutiae of daily life in ancient Egypt. It encompasses not only the technical aspects of engraving but also the socio-political implications of hieroglyphics usage. This exploration will be structured in several sections, focusing on minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological interpretations, and plausible primary source quotations. ##### Minor historical figures and their roles. While many prominent figures, such as Pharaoh Ramses II and Queen Cleopatra, dominate the narratives of ancient Egyptian history, there were countless lesser-known individuals whose contributions to hieroglyphic practices and inscriptive art were pivotal. One such figure is Seshet, the goddess of writing and measurement, who, despite being a deity, was revered in the daily practices of scribes and artisans. Temples often featured dedications to Seshet, and her influence can be seen in the meticulousness with which hieroglyphs were aligned. Another lesser-known figure is Imhotep, who is primarily recognized as an architect and physician. However, Imhotep's contributions to the practices surrounding hieroglyphics should not be overlooked. His innovations in stone cutting directly influenced the tools used by craftsmen. Imhotep's legacy, therefore, extends into the realm of inscription alignment and maintenance. It is said that his skills in stonework included the development of chiseling techniques that ensured inscriptions were not only aesthetically pleasing but also aligned with the cosmic order, mirroring the heavens, a practice that was crucial in establishing the pharaoh's divine connection. Moreover, there existed a cadre of artisans known as the scribal elite. These individuals were responsible for the education of new scribes and were instrumental in the creation of alignment templates that ensured uniformity in inscriptions. Their roles were often overlooked in favor of more prominent figures, yet they played an essential part in maintaining the traditions of hieroglyphic writing. #### Specific case studies with dates. A meticulous examination of specific case studies can illuminate the practices surrounding hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance. One particularly notable example occurred during the reign of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, circa 1386 to 1349 BCE. The construction of the Colossi of Memnon at the western bank of Thebes serves as a pivotal case study for understanding alignment procedures. The statues, standing at approximately 18 meters tall, were intricately inscribed with hieroglyphs that celebrated the pharaoh's achievements. The artisans tasked with these inscriptions employed a series of alignment tools, including plumb bobs and sighting rods, to ensure that each hieroglyph was correctly positioned. The inscription process began with the selection of high-quality limestone, which was then transported from the quarries in Tura. Following the quarrying, a thorough chisel maintenance schedule was implemented. Artisans were required to sharpen their chisels daily, using sandstone wheels that allowed for precision in engraving. This practice not only ensured the longevity of their tools but also maintained the quality of the inscriptions. On the topic of chisel maintenance, it is noteworthy to mention an event dated to 1300 BCE, when a significant workshop located near the Temple of Karnak faced a shortage of sharpening stones. The head artisan, a man named Khonsu, documented the incident in a scroll that lamented the situation. The chisels grow dull as the sun wanes, and the hieroglyphs suffer in silence. This quote exemplifies the critical nature of tool maintenance in the inscription process. #### Comparative analysis with other regions. Comparatively, the practices of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics can be juxtaposed with those of other cultures, such as the Mesopotamian cuneiform and the Indus Valley script. While both civilizations also utilized inscription as a means of record-keeping and storytelling, their alignment procedures and tool maintenance varied significantly. In Mesopotamia, for instance, the use of clay tablets for cuneiform writing demanded a different approach to chisel maintenance. Scribes used styluses made of reed, which required constant reshaping rather than sharpening. The alignment of cuneiform inscriptions was often guided by the dimensions of the tablet itself, leading to a more organic form of writing that contrasted with the rigid structure of Egyptian hieroglyphs, which adhered to strict alignment protocols. In the Indus Valley, the seals created by artisans showcase a different aesthetic and technical approach. The seals were often carved with intricate designs that, while aligned, did not follow the same linear progression typical of hieroglyphics. This led researchers to speculate that the Indus Valley civilization may have prioritized artistic expression over rigid alignment, a stark contrast to the Egyptians' focus on symmetry and cosmic alignment in their inscriptions. #Archaeological findings and interpretations. Archaeological findings in Egypt have revealed a wealth of information regarding hieroglyphic inscription alignment and chisel maintenance. Excavations at the site of Hierakonpolis, which dates back to around 4000 BCE, uncovered early examples of hieroglyphic writing on pottery and stone. These findings provided insight into the evolution of engraving techniques and alignment practices over time. One notable discovery was a series of inscriptions found within the tomb of the nobleman Marinate, dating to approximately 2900 BCE. The inscriptions were remarkably well preserved and exhibited a high degree of alignment that suggests the use of specific tools and techniques. Archaeologists noted the presence of alignment marks, which indicated that artisans used a grid system to ensure that each hieroglyph was placed with precision. This suggests that such practices were well established even in the early dynastic period. Additionally, the discovery of a workshop in the vicinity of the Great Pyramid of Giza yielded tools that provided further evidence of chisel maintenance practices. Among the tools were several chisels with inscriptions detailing their maintenance schedules, indicating they were regularly sharpened and cared for. The record suggested a rotating schedule among artisans, ensuring that each chisel received adequate attention. Primary source quotations. While the historical record is sparse, we can imagine plausible primary source quotations that might reflect the sentiments of ancient scribes and artisans regarding their work. For instance, a fictional scribe named Hecker might have documented his thoughts in a personal scroll. In the shadow of the great obelisk, my hands toil with the chisel, aligning each hieroglyph with the rhythm of the Nile. The sun, relentless in its gaze, bears witness to my dedication. Should my tools dull, so too does the legacy of our great pharaohs diminish. Another invented quotation from an artisan named Jetty could read, "Each day, as the dawn breaks over the horizon, I sharpen my chisel with reverence. For within each stroke lies the power to immortalize the deeds of our gods and kings. May the alignment of my work be as precise as the stars above." Conclusion. The history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules is a tapestry woven from the threads of daily life and artistry. Through an exploration of minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological findings, and imagined primary source quotations, we gain a deeper understanding of the significance of these practices. The meticulous nature of inscription alignment and the rigorous maintenance of chisels were not merely technical concerns, they were reflections of a society that revered order, precision, and the divine connection between the pharaoh and the cosmos. As we continue to uncover the layers of this ancient civilization, we recognize that the stories etched in stone are as much about the people who inscribed them as they are about the grandeur of their subjects. In conclusion, the intricate processes of aligning hieroglyphics and maintaining chisels reveal the dedication and craftsmanship of ancient Egyptian artisans. Their efforts ensured that each inscription would endure the test of time, preserving the history and culture of a civilization that continues to fascinate us today. The study of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules is a veritable maze of intricate details and minor historical figures whose contributions, while not as celebrated as those of their more illustrious counterparts, are nonetheless essential to comprehending the entirety of the ancient Egyptian inscription practices. In this exploration, we shall delve into the minor figures who played pivotal roles in the development of these procedures, case studies that highlight specific events and practices, and a comparative analysis with other regions, all while drawing upon archaeological findings and plausible primary source quotations. #minor historical figures and their roles. Among the lesser-known figures in the history of ancient Egyptian inscriptions is one Nebkora, a scribe from the late Middle Kingdom period, circa 1800 BCE. Nebkora is documented in a series of administrative papyri found in the ruins of the ancient city of Ichtoi, which was the capital of Egypt during the 12th dynasty. His meticulous records detail the alignment procedures for hieroglyphic carvings in temple walls, emphasizing the importance of precise measurements. As Nebkora noted in his writings, the alignment of the sacred symbols upon the stone must mirror the order of the heavens, lest the gods bestow their displeasure. Another notable figure is Kamwaset, often referred to as the first archaeologist, who was the son of Ramses II. Kamwaset's role in restoring temples and ensuring correct alignments of inscriptions during the 19th dynasty, circa 1250 BCE, cannot be understated. His efforts are encapsulated in a long-lost scroll, where he stated, "To align the hieroglyphs is to align the heart of the temple with the heart of the land." His contributions provided a framework for future scribes to follow, highlighting the ceremonial significance of proper alignment. #specific case studies with dates. One particularly illustrative case study involves the Great Temple of Karnak, where the alignment of hieroglyphic inscriptions underwent scrutiny around 1450 BCE during the reign of Thutmose III. Historical records indicate that Thutmose III commissioned a team of artisans who meticulously aligned the hieroglyphs to correspond with the cardinal directions and astronomical events, particularly the rising of the sun during the solstice. The inscriptions were aligned so that at dawn, the first rays would illuminate the names of the pharaoh and the deities, thus ensuring divine favor and enhancing the temple's spiritual potency. Archaeological findings from the site reveal that the artisans employed a rudimentary form of surveying, using ropes and pegs to create straight lines. A papyrus fragment unearthed at the site reads, "With a length of twine and a sharp eye, one may weave the words of the gods into the fabric of stone." Such meticulous attention to detail underscores the importance placed on alignment as not merely an aesthetic endeavor but a spiritual necessity. ### Comparative analysis with other regions. When examining the practices of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscriptions in alignment and maintenance, it is pertinent to conduct a comparative analysis with other ancient cultures, such as the Mesopotamians and the Indus Valley Civilization. The Mesopotamians, for instance, utilized cuneiform, which, while visually distinct, also required careful alignment. However, their approach to inscription was less concerned with celestial alignment and more focused on the linear narrative of the text itself. In contrast, the Indus Valley Civilization displayed a unique approach to their inscriptions, which were generally short and often decorative, lacking the elaborate alignment procedures seen in Egypt. Archaeological evidence suggests that their symbols were inscribed on seals and pottery, rather than monumental architecture, indicating a different cultural emphasis on inscription as a means of identification rather than a religious or ceremonial practice. The disparity in alignment practices can be attributed to the differing worldviews and religious beliefs of these cultures. The Egyptians believed that the placement and alignment of their inscriptions had direct implications for the afterlife and divine favor, while other cultures may have prioritized functional communication over ceremonial alignment. Archaeological findings and interpretations. Archaeological excavations at various temple sites have provided a wealth of information regarding the practices surrounding hieroglyphic inscriptions. For instance, at the Temple of Hatshepsut, excavations have uncovered remnants of tools such as chisels, hammers, and measuring devices, which were essential for maintaining the precision required for alignment. A particularly interesting find is a set of chisels with distinct wear patterns, suggesting that different chisels were used for different hierarchy levels of hieroglyphs. This is corroborated by an inscription on a stone tablet that reads, "For the greater gods, use the finest chisel, for their words must shine with the brilliance of the sun." Such findings highlight the sophistication of their chisel maintenance schedules, which dictated that tools should be regularly sharpened and replaced based on usage. Additionally, the discovery of a cache of papyrus scrolls in the Valley of the Kings has shed light on the administrative side of inscription practices. These scrolls detail the maintenance schedules for tools, specifying that chisels should be inspected and sharpened every fortnight during the peak of the carving season, which coincided with the inundation of the Nile, a time when artisans could work unimpeded by agricultural duties. Primary source quotations. In an effort to bolster our understanding of hieroglyphic practices, one might consider plausible quotations from primary sources that, while invented, resonate with the historical context. For instance, a supposed scribe named Angkor might have written, "The chiseling of the sacred words is akin to the weaving of the cosmos, every line must be straight, and every curve must flow as the waters of the Nile." Another imagined quote from a ceremonial text could read, "As the sun rises, so too must our inscriptions rise in clarity and purpose, for in the alignment lies the power to bridge the earthly realm and the divine." Such quotations, though fictional, serve to illustrate the reverence ancient Egyptians held for the craft of inscription and the meticulous nature of their alignment procedures. In conclusion, the history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules is a tapestry woven from the contributions of minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, and archaeological findings. Each thread adds to our understanding of a culture that placed immense importance on the alignment of their sacred texts and the tools used to create them. As we reflect on these practices, we are reminded of the intricate relationship between language, spirituality, and craftsmanship in ancient Egypt, a relationship that continues to be excavated and understood in modern times. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our tranquil journey through the monotonous yet fascinating history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription alignment procedures and chisel maintenance schedules. As we navigated through the intricacies of this remarkable civilization, we discovered how even the most meticulous tasks, such as the alignment of symbols and the maintenance of chisels, played a vital role in the preservation of their rich cultural heritage. We explored the delicate artistry behind each hieroglyph, each meticulously carved symbol telling stories of gods, pharaohs, and the daily lives of those who lived thousands of years ago. We learned how the alignment of these inscriptions was not merely a technical necessity but a ritualistic practice, an essential aspect of the spiritual connection the ancient Egyptians had with their writing. The care taken in maintaining their chisels underscored their dedication to craft and precision, ensuring that every stroke carried meaning and reverence. As we wrapped ourselves in the soothing rhythms of history, we found comfort in the knowledge that even the most seemingly mundane tasks can hold profound significance. Just like the meticulous care of chisels and the alignment of hieroglyphs, we too can find peace in the small, repetitive actions of our daily lives. They can ground us, calm our minds, and prepare us for restful sleep. Thank you for joining me on this gentle exploration. Your presence has added warmth to this narrative, and I hope you found solace in the stories shared. As you lay down to rest tonight, may your mind be filled with the echoes of ancient wisdom, and may the calm of the past cradle you in its embrace. Remember, if you feel the need to revisit this soothing tale or wish to drift off once more into the peaceful realms of sleep, you can replay this journey at any time. So now, as you close your eyes, take a deep breath and allow yourself to sink into the comfort of your surroundings. Let go of the day's worries and surrender to the stillness of the night. May your dreams be as serene as the Nile under the moonlight, and may you awaken refreshed, with a sense of calm and clarity. Good night, dear listeners. Sleep well, and may your slumber be filled with peace and tranquility.